What's going on there, YouTube, and welcome back to another comic book video. Okay, so we are going to continue our coverage over X-Men comics as we work our way up to Days of Future Present, the next crossover that we are going to talk about when it comes to X-Men comics. But before we are able to actually dive into that story, we have to jump back over to Uncanny X-Men and cover a 3-part story arc that takes place in Uncanny X-Men number 256, 257, and 258. It's a 3-part story arc that introduces a new concept for the character known as Bessie Braddock, aka Psylocke. Now, when it comes to this concept, it's going to be Bessie being placed in a brand new body, an Asian body. Now, there is something I do want to say real quickly before we dive into this actual story. The first is that this story is going to be retconned a lot down the road in later books that we are going to cover down the road once we do get to those books. And so for the sake of this video, for the sake of this story, I am not going to talk about any of the retcons until they actually happen in later books down the road. Number 2, this 3-part story arc is actually part of Acts of Vengeance, a massive crossover that Marvel gave us in the late 1980s, early 1990s. And matter of fact, we are covering Acts of Vengeance, but this 3-part story arc has nothing to do with it. It has the label on the books, and also you have one of the main 2 bad guys actually say Acts of Vengeance. But besides those 2 things, this 3-part story arc has nothing to do with that crossover. And so if you're somebody who is trying to read the complete Acts of Vengeance story, you can really skip over these 3 books and move on with your coverage over that. But either way, let's go ahead and dive into today's story. And so as we dive into today's video, we are then introduced to 2 characters who are going to play the bad guys of this story. The first is Masuo and the second is the Mandarin. Now when it comes to Masuo, he is part of the Hand. Now the Hand is known as an evil ninja organization that worships a demon known as the Beast. Now when it comes to the Hand, by this point, they're not as strong as they used to be. And matter of fact, after this story, they're going to become more powerful down the road in other books. But currently, they're trying to rebuild where they used to be yet. Now, when it comes to the Mandarin, he is a crime lord in Hong Kong. Now, when it comes to his powers, all his powers comes from the 10 rings that he wears on his fingers. Now, each ring has a different ability that he can use on his opponents. Now, like I said, when it comes to the Mandarin, he is a powerful crime lord in Hong Kong. Well, he used to be. By this point, you have other crime lords now looking at him as a weakling. And the reason why? Because he lost to Iron Man in a recent story over in Iron Man comics. And so because he lost to an American hero, the crime underworld is no longer scared of the Mandarin. And that is where Masuo comes in. He says, listen, the reason why I took down your bodyguards is to show you that you are falling apart, that your whole entire empire is weak. And so I want to give you somebody who can help restore your status as a powerful crime lord, the man in charge of the crime world here in Hong Kong. I want to give you a powerful assassin. Now I want to shift our focus over to Bessie Braddock, the main character of today's story. Now when it comes to Bessie, we see her currently in some kind of dream state. And with her being inside this dream state, she's currently dreaming about her and her brother being young again and currently at some amusement park. Now while there, you have Bessie riding a carousel. Now while riding the carousel, she begins to believe that she's actually part of some kind of war, that she's some kind of pilot. But then out of nowhere, reality around her changes, where she's actually part of some kind of war. But then out of nowhere, reality turns back to normal, where she's back at the carousel. Now, the two workers at this amusement park, they were watching her very carefully, but they also look very evil. Now, once you have Bessie and Brian leaving, you then have one of the workers mention that Bessie had dropped a ring. Now, Bessie realized that she was not wearing a ring, but the worker still gives it to her, and so she's able to leave with that ring. But on the way home, you then have Bessie decide to mess with Brian, her twin brother, by grabbing his book because she wants to play with her brother, somebody who's really focusing on his studies. Now, after she does take his book, he does get very angry and charges at her. But once again, reality changes around them, where right now they're great warriors of the past. But then once their two swords hit, reality turns back to normal. Now, after reality turns back to normal, you did have Bessie apologize for taking Brian's book. But then you have Brian realize that, you know what? Bessie needs her brother. But then out of nowhere, just like earlier, he tells Bessie, hey, I found a ring and I think you should take it. And so now she has two rings on her finger. But then the twins are then confronted by their older brother, Jamie Braddock. Now, when it comes to Jamie, we haven't really talked much about him, but we are going to in later books. But when it comes to Jamie Braddock, he does arrive in a very nice car with a random woman. Now, for Bessie, she's happy to see her older brother, and so he offers to let her drive his brand new car. Now, he'll control the brakes and the gas, but she'll control the steering wheel. But either way, they just speed off into the road, having a good old time. And of course, the mysterious woman that Jamie brought with him is having a horrible time, but she keeps begging and begging for them to stop. And once they do stop, reality changes again. So now we see Bessie as an older woman, but also we see Bessie getting out of the car with Doug Ramsey. Jamie and his girlfriend have disappeared. Now, when it comes to Doug Ramsey, better known as Cypher, he died back in Fall of the Mutants, but also him and Bessie had a romantic relationship. Not very serious, but it seemed like if he was still alive, it could have led down that path. But either way, she does walk into the body shop. Now, once she does walk into the body shop, she's then confronted by Storm. And at first, it seems like this is going to be a very nice reunion, but it's not going to be, because here's the reason why. Two workers of the body shop grabs Bessie and throw her into some kind of device where her body begins to change. Now, one of the workers looks just like Mojo. Now, when it came to Bessie, in an earlier story we did not cover, she was actually blinded by a villain we're going to see here in a moment. But after being blinded by that villain, she was given cybernetic eyes thanks to Mojo. Now, that was a story that took place way before she had properly joined the X-Men. But either way, once you do have Bessie come out of the device, she now has a brand new body. She's no longer Caucasian, she's now Asian. Now, there is something I do want to talk about when it comes to Bessie Braddock, the idea of the Siege Perilous. Let me explain. So in the earlier story, you have the X-Men on a mission to save Polaris, but they were warned by Gateway, really Psylocke was warned by Gateway, if they come back home to their base, they most likely are going to die by the hands of the Reavers. Now, when it came to Psylocke in the X-Men, they still came back home, but she did use the Siege Perilous. The Siege Perilous has the ability to give somebody a new life somewhere else in the world. Now, sometimes you are able to remember your past life, and sometimes you may forget completely about your past life. And so when it came to Psylocke and the rest of the X-Men, to save themselves from the Reavers, they all walked through the Siege Perilous. Now, when it came to Psylocke, she was found by Matsuo, but he tells us when he found her, her mind was broken. And that's really important when it comes to the character of Psylocke. Let me explain. So with her mind being broken, you now have the hand in Masuo trying to do a process of brainwashing to change her mind to fall in line with the hand's goals. You see, like I said earlier, her memories, her mind was broken. And so what the hand are trying to do is take the few pieces of her mind that will perfectly fall in line with their goals, with their ambitions, to make her become an assassin for the hand, to make her mind believe in a new reality, a reality where she's part of the hand, where she's actually an assassin for the Mandarin. And so as we dive back into her mind, we begin to see her trying to get rid of her past life. So for example, there is a moment where she sees herself as Captain Britain because there was a point in time she was a Captain Britain, but it was very short-lived. But then she hates the idea what happened to her when she was Captain Britain. And so now it's her trying to get rid of that past life, that past version of herself. Now Storm is there, but Storm is also part of her past life as well. And so she kills off Storm in her dream to gain another ring. Now, when it comes to Colossus, it's really interesting, and let me explain. So she does kill off Colossus, but she does tell us that when it comes to the Siege Perilous, it also gives you your true heart desire. And so when it came to Colossus, for him in his dream, it was to be a painter. But for her, it's something completely different. It's the idea that she always wanted the ability to fight, to have the fighting skills to use against different people who may stand in her way. And so it seems that this dream is also trying to tell us her true heart desire, thanks to her using the Siege Perilous. The Siege Perilous delivered what she truly wanted. Same thing for Dazzler. We see that Dazzler was able to get what she wanted when it came to her heart desire after walking through the Siege Perilous, to be a star again. But either way, you didn't have Psylocke arrive, and she also kills off Dazzler. Now when it comes to her killing off Storm, Colossus, and Dazzler, she's also collecting a ring from each of their dead bodies as well. Now, when it comes to Havoc, it seems that in this dream, he did not get what he truly wanted when it came to his heart desire. Because also, when it comes to the Siege Perilous, it also judges you. It also decides if you were really a good person or a bad person. And so when it came to Havoc, it seemed like he was judged, but most likely he was not given a peaceful life like the others did. And so unfortunately, he's on the run. But while being on the run, he's then confronted by Psylocke, who again kills him off to get his ring as well. Now, when it comes to Psylocke, she does not have to kill off Rogue, because Rogue was battling against Carol Danvers. This is a way to remind us that around his time in Marvel Comics, Rogue has some issues. You see, over the years, Rogue had touched so many different people that they were able to build psyches inside of her mind. And those psyches were trying to take over her mind, especially when it came to Carol Danvers. And so it seemed that Carol and Rogue battled for so long, they both were able to kill each other, making it easy for Psylocke to get the final ring. But after being able to get the last ring, she's then confronted by Slaymaster. Now, when it comes to Slaymaster, he is actually the reason why she went blind so many years ago. Let me explain. So like I said earlier, she was Captain Britain, but for a very short period of time. And reason why? Because of him. He took her eyes from her. And so after being blinded, she was then given eyes by Mojo, cybernetic eyes. Now I want to shift our focus back over to the Siege Perilous, and here is the reason why. Because remember, it does give you a new life, but it also tries to give you what your heart truly desires. And for Colossus earlier, it was to be a painter, but for her, it seems like it was the fighting skills. She wants to know how to be a better fighter, and now we know why. Because of him. Slaymaster was a very skilled fighter, and so he was able to easily defeat Brian Braddock, Captain Britain, so many times over the years, but also he blinded her. That's why she wanted the fighting skills, so that she'll never be in that kind of situation ever again. But either way, once she's able to take down Slave Master, she's then confronted by the Mandarin to kind of show the brainwashing is complete. She is truly under his control. And so as we jump into Uncanny X-Men number 257, well, we do pick up with Bessie Braddock going by a different name, better known as Lady Mandarin. Now, of course, by this point, she's now fully working for the Mandarin, and we see her being able to bring in the different crime lords of Hong Kong. Now, like I said earlier, the other crime lords of Hong Kong were no longer looking at the Mandarin as a possible threat. They began to look at him as a nobody because he lost to Iron Man, an American hero. But this is Bessie saying, no, you guys are going to fall back in line. You guys are going to make sure that you run your operations under the Mandarin's control. And at first, they laugh at her like, okay, we have no idea who you are, but why should we listen to you? And she gives them the reason why they should listen to her. She kills off most of their guys and then leave them there scared out of their mind. But they realize they have no choice but to follow her directions. Now we do pick up with Wolverine and Jubilee. Now, before we are able to discuss more about Wolverine, there is something I want to say about him and the rest of the X-Men. Now remember, the rest of the world believes that the X-Men are currently dead, because back in Fall of the Mutants, you had the X-Men give up their lives to stop the adversary from coming back into the Earth realm. Now when doing that, they did it on live television. And so to the entire world, the X-Men died that day, not knowing that the X-Men were brought back to life soon after. And so when it comes to Wolverine and the rest of the X-Men, the world believes that they are dead. And so when Wolverine and Jubilee arrive in Hong Kong, he goes by a different name, a new identity that he was able to build, and that would be Patch. Now, with him being Patch, he's well known across Asia, and they know not to mess with him. And so the guys at the harbor say, you know what? We are not going to search your boat at all. You are able to leave easily. Now, remember, Wolverine and Jubilee are the last surviving members of the X-Men. The rest of the team has been killed off or went through the siege perilous. And so this is Wolverine trying to find the X-Men to bring them back together. But he knows that one person is able to give him that information. Now, in our last video, Wolverine was captured by the Reavers and he was tortured. And so he was seriously injured physically and mentally, to the point where he begins to hallucinate and believe that Nick Fury and also Carol Danvers are there talking to him. Now we also get reminded about Storm. Now remember, when it came to Storm, she was actually killed off in an earlier video we did. She was killed off on accident by Havoc. But the thing was, later on, she came back as a child. But it also seems like she forgot who she actually was. And so right now she's on the run because she knows that the Shadow King is trying to get her. Now, the Shadow King is a very powerful multi-universe being. He has a host in different universes across the multiverse. And currently, he's using a host known as Jacob, who's an FBI agent, to hopefully find Storm and to finally get her. And so you have Jacob telling everyone in law enforcement to look out for her, that she is wanted. And this is Storm, a child right now, with no idea who she truly is, on the run at the moment. Now, getting back over to Wolverine, you have Wolverine currently trying to gather intel about where are the other members of the X-Men. And so he knows the one person in Hong Kong who could most likely help him is going to be Rose. Rose Wu. She has the ability to get intel on almost anybody in her area. And so you have Wolverine wanting to have a conversation with Rose in private. And so he sends Jubilee away. And when it comes to Rose, she has a granddaughter, Ruth. And so you have Ruth take Jubilee out shopping so that Logan and Rose can have their conversation about the idea of where the other X-Men could be at. But now we jump over to Psylocke, and we have Psylocke going through a training session, but this also gives us the ability to see her making her psychic knife. Now, when it comes to her psychic knife, it has the ability to dive deep into someone's mind, causing a lot of damage to that person's mind or being very lethal. Now, while she's training, she's then confronted by Masio, and you have Masio telling her, you have a new assignment. A man known as Patch has arrived in Hong Kong, and he works for a crime lord known as Tiger back in Madripoor. I want to know why he's here in Hong Kong for. And so this is the hand believing that Wolverine is there to help Tiger expand her operations into Hong Kong, outside of Madripoor. And this also shows again, the world believes that Wolverine is dead, and they only know him as Patch. But now we have to jump over to Ruth and also Jubilee. And you have the two young ladies run into some gang members. Now, when it comes to Jubilee, she's a hotshot. She believes that she's actually able to take them on. But you have Ruth tell her, no, that's the wrong move to do here in this kind of area. Now, once you have the girls being able to get away from the gang members and then begin the process of building a friendship with one another, well, both ladies are taken away by a mysterious shadow. But then we get a page to remind us about what happened on Muir Island in our last video. Now remember, in our last video, Muir Island was actually attacked by the Reavers, who believed that Wolverine and Jubilee were heading there for shelter as a way to hide from the Reavers, not knowing our heroes went over to Hong Kong instead. But either way, when they had attacked Muir Island, they were stopped by the X-Men of Muir Island that was being led by Moira McTaggart. She has a lab on that island. Now we see her currently asking Forge to build some kind of defense system around the island to properly protect it. Now you also have Polaris also getting worried about her newfound powers. You see, Polaris lost the ability to control metal, but she did gain new abilities. And one of those abilities is that she's able to play with other people's emotions to make them feel negative about themselves and other people around them. But while you have her being worried, well, she's then confronted by Legion. Now remember, Legion has a personality issue. Each personality has a different kind of power. And so currently we see one of the personalities has taken over the body of Legion and now has big plans for everyone on Muir Island, starting with Polaris. But now we have to shift our focus back over to Wolverine. Now when it comes to Logan, he's just waiting for Jubilee to come back to the boat, except it's been hours and she has not come back yet. And that is very concerning for Logan. But while waiting, he realized that different members of the Hand are trying to get on the boat. And so now you have Logan saying, you know what? It's time for a showdown. Because Logan knows the Hand very well. He knows how to fight against them. And when they believe that they have the jump on him, he shows them that they were truly mistaken and he takes them all down. But then out of nowhere, there is a huge fireworks show, and that tells Logan it had to be Jubilee. But then he realized that she's being controlled by Psylocke, or Lady Mandarin. She was the one we saw earlier who was able to grab Jubilee and Ruth. Now when it comes to Psylocke, she does battle with Logan for a very short period of time. And here's the reason why. Because she was able to take her psychic knife and stab it right into the mind of Logan, doing some serious damage to him. And so now him and Jubilee are now prisoners of her in the Hand. And so now we jump into Uncanny X-Men number 258. Now, when it comes to this issue, we do pick up with Wolverine now going through the same process that Psylocke went through in the earlier chapter. The beginning of the process where they're trying to brainwash him to bring Wolverine into their fold. Now, like we saw back in the first chapter, you had another psychic kind of guide Psylocke down the path they wanted her on. And so currently they're trying to use Psylocke to do the same thing for Wolverine, to guide him down the right path that will help them out down the road. And so when it comes to Jubilee, she hates the idea of seeing Wolverine go through this actual process. Now when it comes to Jubilee, she does try to escape. She tries her best to get away from Masio, who's currently watching over Psylocke do the whole process on Wolverine. Now, when it comes to Jubilee, she does get somewhat far away from those few guys, but as she runs down the hallway, she bumps into the Mandarin to remind us that he's also part of this story. Now, when it comes to the Mandarin, he's very intrigued in Jubilee because she's Chinese. But she does not act like a Chinese person does. She acts more American, and that really bothers him a lot. And so he kind of want to take her in to reteach her the ways of their people. And so you didn't have Mandarin saying, you know what? You're coming with me. Now you do have a few members of the Hand try to attack him because they believe that she belongs to them as their hostage, but you have the Mandarin remind them that they work for him. And so if she is their hostage, that means she is also his hostage as well. But he now tells them she is coming with me. But now we have to jump back over to Muir Island, and when we do, we pick up with the new Muir Island team testing out the security system that Forge was able to build around the island. And so while you have our heroes testing that out and seeing how strong the actual system is, no one noticed that Polaris is no longer around because Polaris was actually grabbed by Legion. And remember, one of the personalities of Legion has taken over his body, and that will be Jack Wayne. And when it comes to Jack Wayne, he's going to use this time to do something big on Muir Island. But now he was able to remove Polaris from the equation, and with her being gone, the rest of the Muir Island X-Men team are not going to know what is coming for them. Now, getting back over to Wolverine currently going through the brainwashing system, is Psylocke, like I said earlier, being the one who has to guide Wolverine down the right path when it comes to him falling in line with the Hand organization. But while working through his mind, she pretends to be the different lovers of Wolverine that he had over the years to break down his defenses. But this is Logan staying calm. This is Logan meditating. This is Logan saying, you are not going to win inside my own mind. Now, when it comes to Psylocke, she tries to use her psychic knife as a way to do more damage to Logan, to hopefully weaken his mind, to hopefully be able to take over his mind. But when she does that a second time, she now builds some kind of psychic connection between the two of them. Now, two things happened after she was able to build a deep connection with Logan. The first is that we are reminded that Logan was severely injured in our last video to the point where he began to hallucinate. He began to see Nick Fury and also Carol Danvers, even though they were not there. But here's the thing, because now Psylocke can also see them as well. Now, the second thing is, when it comes to Psylocke being able to build that connection with Wolverine, it kind of helped restore her mind to what it was before the Siege Perilous. It's her now being able to remember everything about her past life, but to also keep all the fighting skills in her mind as well. And so you have Logan and her being able to take down the ninjas who are also in that room. Now, when it comes to Logan and Psylocke, they remember that they have to save Jubilee. And so now you have our two heroes going out of their way to save her. And so you have Psylocke walk into the room where you have the Mandarin trying to teach Jubilee the culture of Chinese people. But while trying to teach her that, you have Psylocke walk into the room and throw down the body of Logan to say that he was trying to escape and she had no choice but to most likely kill him off. Now we already know that she is lying, but you have Jubilee freak out because she believes that Logan is now dead. And so she released a huge amount of energy that does blow up the office. Now you then have Psylocke reveal that she kind of ruined their plan when it came to saving her. But either way, you have Psylocke try her best to take down the Mandarin, but she fails. And the Mandarin is able to corner both Jubilee and Psylocke very easily. But the Mandarin forgot about Logan. And so you have Logan being able to sneak up from behind on the Mandarin and saying, "You are going to let us go. If you don't, I am going to kill you." Now for the Mandarin, he's all like, "You can't kill me because even if you kill me, I can still tell my rings to do one last task for me, which is kill off your friends." But you have Logan saying, "That's okay, because here's the thing. Even if you do kill them off right now, I'm still going to kill you." And you have the Mandarin being very scared of the idea of Logan killing him. And so he allows our heroes to leave to get a boat. Now, when it comes to Psylocke, she does feel bad about what she did when it came to the Siege Perilous. Now, like I said earlier, the X-Men walked through it, but it was really more of her controlling their minds and telling them to walk through the Siege Perilous. And now she kind of feels bad for doing that. And so she feels like she should not be around Logan nor Jubilee. But you have Logan tell her, "This is where you belong, to help me and her find the others so that we are able to continue on Charles Xavier's dream." But this is where we are going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.